Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Amplify with Adam. Today we have David here from Motive Machine Works. David, man, thanks for
How's it
joining.
going? Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man, I'm excited to have you on the show and talk to you a little bit. So, give us a little bit of an intro. Tell us, kind of who you are and how you got into the space, and a little bit about Motive Machine Works.
Yeah, so my name's David Smith. I own Motive Machine Works here. Up until last Monday, I was a one-man operation, so I just kind of hired my first employee now, which I guess is kind of is a good sign. But I got started back. I went first. Flash forward, I'm younger. I'm 27 years old. So when I graduated high school, I had kind of intentions to become a welder, and long story short, that just didn't work out, and I ended up going into the machining program at the college I was interested in going to. I got an associate's degree in automated manufacturing, and then from there I worked in the industry for about four and a half years in different machine shops, different environments, anything from medical to any job shop, anything, similar parts to what Xometry makes, and I mean all over the board. And I kind of saw locally here that the technology was lacking a little bit as far as like software side of things. A lot of shops around my local area still are programming G code by hand in a lot of applications. And, depending on the parts, I guess it doesn't necessarily matter. But for what I do, I think I can do things a little better with CAM software. So I kind of saw a little bit of an opportunity there to do things a little differently. And at least in my opinion, for the way that I'm doing it, maybe a little more reliable than some of the other methods locally. And again, I'm not saying everybody, locally is doing something wrong. I'm just saying I saw a need for something as far as that I could do. And I basically got my first machine. It was a 1994 Haas VF0.
Nice.
And I started with that. I mean, it was really, I never bought that machine thinking that was going to be my end all be all, like, this is my Rolls Royce here, but basically I was just starting with it, and it was a starting point. I had the good software. I basically was trained on the software that I was using, Autodesk Fusion 360. And so basically I wanted to hit the ground running with that, use that as a proof of concept for my business model and get my customers in line and everything. And basically flash forward to today, I since added a second older Haas. And then basically as those two got running on a daily basis, as the cash flow starts to come in more, I ended up upgrading my first Haas to a brand new 2019 Doosan DNM 4500 vertical milling machine. And then I ended up adding a second one because of how much I mean, I was blowing my cycle times out of the water compared to how I was doing things. And I've added probing to each of my machines, both on the table and on the spindle. So it's just another reliable process. And I mean, there's certain things where probing, it just makes sense as even in the 1 and 2, prototype type world. So I found that those, I cannot basically live without them in my daily operations now. And so now I have both machines with high-speed machining, 12,000 RPM spindles, probing on both of them. So, I mean, I got them dialed in. That's kind of how I like to run them.
That's awesome. Now, there's a lot to unpack there. So first of all, congratulations on your first employee.
Yeah, thank you.
Awesome to see growth, man.
Yeah.
Now, on your website, you touched on this a little bit.
Right.
You talk about like new machining strategies to result more reliable and cost-effective manufacturing.
Right.
And you focus on new technology. And that's mainly, I mean, you touched on the programming side of that. Is that kind of where you focus, and is that where you find your competitive edge?
Yeah, I would say so. Like as far as, I mean, I'm not obviously in today's world, across the country, I'm not the only one that knows how to do like high efficiency material removal. But basically, I'm not afraid to spend money on those types of technologies. For example, one of the tools I use now is an ISCAR high feed mill. It's 2-inch diameter. It has 7 inserts on it, and for a lot of like heavy material removal, I use that, and I mean, this thing just rips stainless steel out of my machine like it's nothing. So that's kind of where I try to experiment with things like that. And like I said, I'm not afraid. I mean, they're not cheap, but by the time you buy all the arbor, the cutter body, all the inserts and everything, I mean, they're not cheap, but I see that savings in my time as more effective use of basically my time. I mean, as a machine shop, we are basically selling our time.
Right.
So, you know, that's where I see things as, hey, if I spend this much money for this tool, but I can, in the course of this job, I can pay for the tool. So that's kind of how I like to look at things. And like I said, I'm always experimenting with like shrink fit tool holders, with hydraulic tool holders, and different things like that. That basically just trying to keep upgrading what I have, and that kind of pairs with, along with the technology side of things, as far as like having the high efficiency milling, as far as like more so for roughing.
Yeah.
Just to get, you know, from this big of a block down to this little part, or, you know, whatever the case is. And that, like I said, that all pairs in with the probing and everything like that. And like the tool breakage detection cycles that I have on my CAM software, basically if I'm running some little tiny end mill, I can have it touch that in the program after it's done running, to make sure that it didn't break.
Yeah.
So it's just different strategies like that I try to use to not only to stay competitive, but to give a reliable part every time. And that's ultimately will go back into more reliable manufacturing as well. So
yeah, and I think selling your time that's such a good way to look at it, especially as a 1 to 2 man shop, because you're wearing hats, right? Like you're not only doing business development and you know, probably updating your website, but you're also machining, you're doing quality, you're doing shipping and fulfillment, right? So there's a lot of
absolutely.
your time is super valuable. Now, when you see the savings on your time, is it that you're able to invest in some of those other areas?
Exactly. Yeah. And that's the next step for me kind of right now, as far as investing in other areas. I'm looking to add some turning, like very, very soon, some turning capability, CNC. I'm going to get a CNC Doosan, probably a Lynx to get started, just a little small lathe, you know, with some live tooling capabilities on it as well. So
now, is that something that are you just seeing work that you could be taking on from your existing customers? Is that kind of what's the impetus there for?
Yeah. I also, I think in a machine shop, you know, milling is great, but you kind of also need to have some turning capabilities as well. I've taken some jobs on that really should have been a turning job that I did on a mill, and you know, the parts were good. It was not an issue, but it would have been a lot easier and better to do it on a lathe. And you know, I think with that, I'll have a lot of more capabilities in general. And yes, to answer your question, yes, I have some demand from my local customers and from Xometry as well. I see some jobs pop up. I'm like, oh my gosh, this would be a home run for me. You know what I mean? And I'm like, man, I just need to get the lathe. And right now, my biggest constraint is space. I started off sharing this space with some relatives, and their business has not really gone in a whole lot of areas. It's kind of stagnant right now, and they have one piece of machinery in here, and then if that can leave, I'll have the space right now for my own machine, my own lathe to put in there. So that's kind of the next step for now.
That's awesome, man. And it's cool to see the growth, because I know you guys started in 2018.
Now, not that terribly old.
Yeah, not that terribly old. So it's awesome to see the vertical growth. Now, with starting in 2018, you had a little bit of a runway before 2020 hit. Now, in 2020, were you having to did you find yourself having to pivot on stuff, or were you able to were you seeing consistent business from your same customers?
I would say ever since it's ironic. I got involved with Xometry like 3 days before the pandemic started is when I took my first job, and like my first paying job, not the test part.
Right.
But I would say with a combination of that and my local customer also, they just started like ramping up like crazy. With the combination of those two things, my business just took off in 2020. It blew up like I've never seen anything like it before. So I think the combination of my customers getting busier, getting in the door with Xometry, getting that started, and also having the Doosan's in here. The second Doosan I ended up getting in July of 2020.
Gotcha.
So with the combination of all of that going on, and the machines are so much faster, more reliable, I don't have to worry that the thing's going to break on me. Just the combination of everything all together, my business completely exploded. So
that's amazing. And I mean, there were so many people that, I think 2020 was a pinch on, but also if you talk to a lot of small manufacturers, it feels like folks were not only able to stay open, but a lot of them were able to grow, which is a really cool story there. So
I was very fortunate.
Yeah, that's amazing. Now, when you talk about investing in the tool on the front end and seeing those savings, have you also seen some of you were saying that the more quality and reliable part, have you seen where your quality and your inspection on the back end, it's, you see more quality parts there when you invest in some of the better tooling for it?
Yeah, I would say not necessarily like the cutting tools making I have always bought quality cutting tools in my opinion since the beginning of my existence in business, because I've already had experience working in machine shops, right? And I know that buying a $20 Chinese end mill versus buying a quality American made one for or whatever, just a quality cutter in general, I already know that the savings of saving $20 or whatever on buying the cutting tool is not worth the hassle that it's going to cause. And like you said, it can cause quality issues. But back to what you're saying, yes, I have found that on the back end of the inspection, with everything I have inside my machining centers now, as far as like the probing, I can probe stuff for positional accuracy. I can, like I said, I will probe a part in process probing to either probe the web or probe the datum, the correct datum on the actual part. And those probes, they come out, they're Renishaw probes. They come out, it's dead on every time. So, there's other variables like deflection with cutting tools and things like that. But as long as you have everything dialed in right, the part will come out repeatable every time, and hit the spec on the drawing or whatever the case is. So, I would say that the investment that I made on the equipment side has definitely helped me out with that as far as like quality goes. And not having to kind of, all right, this we're going to take this out and then recut this to hit this size, or whatever the case may be on the older methods of doing things. This seems to be a lot more reliable.
Awesome. Now, when you look at it, it sounds like you're kind of in a growth period, right? So like 2020, you're growing your business, you're adding employees. When you look at the future for Motive, what does that look like? Obviously, you're expanding capabilities with the turning. Is there anything else that kind of is maybe drawing your eye or in the plans for growth there?
I would say that the turning is the immediate thing that I'm trying to get into at the moment. After this lathe gets in here, there might be room for one more small, like a small milling machine or something. But besides that, after that, I'm about maxed out in my building here. So I would say after that, I'm going to look for either another larger space to rent or possibly buying a commercial building. And, I've been kind of looking into that now. And the problem with that is that the commercial spaces are very expensive to buy. But the other problem is that they're also very hard to find to rent for the smaller sizes.
Right.
And when they come up on the market, they're gone quick. So that's the issue I'm having. So I'm kind of starting to, now I see how slow things can kind of move. I'm kind of, very slowly looking into what my next step is as far as my building goes. And so that's kind of my next thing after the lathe. But for now, I want to get the lathe in here, start making parts and get that, get that in motion. And then after that, I guess we'll see from there, but those are kind of the immediate things.
Any technology on the quality side? Like, do you have a CMM or are you looking at one?
No, not so much the CMM. I have what a lot of machine shops have, which would be like calipers, height
Mhm.
gauges, gauge pins, telescoping gauges, bore gauges, anything like that. But as far as the CMM at the exact moment, I kind of find that for what I do at the current stage, it's not necessarily 100% necessary for where I'm at right at the moment, but
Yeah.
as things start to progress, like if I have a lot of parts that I'm making that require like 100% inspection, or whole locations have to be within plus or minus 1,000, and I have a lot of them to make, then that's where I think something like a CMM would make sense. Or you have a lot of true position call outs where you have to hold very very tight between three datums. Then at that point I think that could be something in the future. But for now, I think for the low volume of stuff that I do, I think it's not really a huge issue at the moment.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Now, one thing that I always ask for people that join the show is if you were kind of to can a piece of advice for either your younger self when you're just looking at starting the business, just
Right.
to do this, or someone that's looking at joining the manufacturing industry, what's like one or two pieces of advice that you would pass along to those folks?
Um, well, I would say you should be very good at managing money on a personal level before you should get into anything related to the business, because most likely, if you're not good at managing money on a personal level, you will probably not be good at it in a business. And why most businesses fail to start. This is something that I gathered from John Saunders from NYC
Mm,
CNC on YouTube. One
great
of the things
shout.
yeah, one of the things he talks about is um, cash flow is one of the biggest things to kill a small business when you're starting out, and it's so true. And so that's one thing you got to have. If I would give a piece of advice, I would say have, when I started my business, everything I bought was in cash. I bought my first machine in cash, and it wasn't anything spectacular, but I wanted to make sure that with an unproven business model, I wasn't going to be owing the bank $1,000 a month when I don't know if I'm going to make $1,000 a month off the bat. So and I tooled the machine up. Everything I did it in cash, and I just got started. And just do something, in my opinion, to get yourself started. That doesn't mean that's going to be the only machine you ever buy. That doesn't mean that's where you're going to stay forever. It's just do the work to get started, get the customers, satisfy their demands, and prove yourself out. And then once you have that, then you can start looking at taking on loans, or however you want to go about financing equipment.
Mhm.
But I think in general, debt is not a good thing. And I think, of course, the credit companies, they want you to have debt, right? But the only debt that I have on my company to this day are my two pieces of machinery, and obviously that you kind of need to at some point to unless you have that much laying around,
Right.
um, to
But
invest.
it's a slow and steady growth of
Right.
investing in your business and bringing on customers and earning those customers respect and trust on getting quality parts to them, and then
Exactly.
slowly expanding those capabilities once your
Yeah.
business model is kind of proven. And I think that's
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah. Yeah. That's basically it. And obviously the best thing that I could say is, if you have the skill, if you can provide quality parts, that's obviously the number one priority, right? I mean,
Mhm.
most companies don't really care how you make the part. They just want it to be what the drawing or the model is. And then, whether you do that on an old machine and you're hitting their spec right out of the ballpark, or you're doing it on a brand new machine and it's faster, really doesn't matter to get started. You just have to make a good part, and that is to the spec of the drawing or the model or whatever the case may be. That's and building that relationship with your customer. I mean, that's the number one thing to get started. And
Yeah.
so that's where I would say that focus on that kind of as the most important thing to get started first before worrying about anything else as far
Yeah,
as like debt or anything.
quality parts, and then like you said, you can kind of own investing in your time and
Right.
making your time more efficient. Man,
Right.
David, I think that's phenomenal advice, and Really, really, good stuff to pass along for anyone looking to get into the manufacturing space.
Right.
I've so enjoyed you joining the show, man. Thanks for coming on, and this has been
thanks for having me.
Yeah, awesome. Well, guys, check in next week for another episode of Amplify with Adam. And David, like I said, man, really, really enjoyed this. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for your time.